with something very easy.
My name.
How's your Frightfest going so far?
My Fright, it's been exhausting but exhilarating. I love, it's the 20th year, it's a huge year, so I'm pretty proud to have a film in this anniversary. So, and to be opening night is just like the icing on the cake, so yeah, massive. Well, it's pretty grim beginnings. It was the tragic death of my dad, dropping dead in front of me, was really the whole genesis of the project. So I had quite a strange grieving process that his partner thought it'd be a good idea for her ex-husband as the mortician, to embalm Dad and bring the body back to the house to be housed in a coffin for 5 days or so, while we, the siblings, sort of went through a grieving process. But I ended up spending a lot of time by myself at night with him in the house alone, which was quite surreal and scary and spooky, but also very emotionally bonding experience with his body. So yeah, really strange period. And during the days when it wasn't so freaky, there were like people coming to pay respect, friends and family, which is quite normal. But also people that I didn't know who had these kind of really alternate histories of my father. They were interesting stories, but I just hadn't heard of them. And so I started, like later on, when I was thinking about this, creating something as a sort of tribute to my old man from this experience. I thought maybe if his history was a dark history, and what if that came and all these unanswered questions that fathers and sons had, what if those sort of answers and questions were very dark and disturbing? And so that was kind of like the whole idea in a kernel, that I took that skeleton structure to a writer that I'd worked with on a previous film called The Greasy Strangler, Toby Harvard, and said, what do you think about this idea? I want to make a really, something. I felt like life was short as well, so I had an epiphany of like, I think Dad would be super proud that I'm finally getting back to filmmaking, because I started off doing it when I was young, and then I supported everyone else's dreams as a producer. And young filmmakers, a lot of incubator programs that I've done over the years, but I'd sort of left my aspirations way hidden down. And so it took that to sort of cure me of procrastination. And he came back though with a really involved, layered, crazy genre script. And so the idea of this little intimate kind of spooky film changed courses and became something that was like a real hybrid film. And it took me a while to get my head around whether that was what I wanted to do as, a tribute to my old man. And then once I sort of got involved, and we started sort of shaping it and honing it and tightening it all up and coming up with it was just a really beautiful collaboration process with the writer. And it came out kind of good. I've been really happy about it, because at the end of the day, I think it would have been a terrible decision to make, to use the grieving process and then make a really maudlin, earnest film, because I'm not that person. I'm like a very gallows sense of humor. I was making really bad taste jokes like moments after the death, just to cope with everything. Like, it's just in my nature, and it was also my dad's nature to have a pitch black sense of humor. So the film is very respectful to that type of humor. It's when there's moments of violence, there's always sort of humor undercutting everything in the film. So yeah, it came out pretty much exactly what I wished for. So I think that's the ultimate goal of any filmmaker. It's like what you see in your head ends up pretty much as the finished article. So it was written for Elijah, so it was kind of scary that we put all the eggs in that basket. And I know Elijah as a mate, so I had a big, personal connection with the guy, so I felt very comfortable sending him the script and saying, what do you think about it? And so the producer, Mette Marie, at the start, I got a phone call from both of them saying, we're in, let's get this thing made. And that was just, and a huge part of Elijah wanting to do it was just because he knew how attached I was from a deeply personal connection, but also he just really wanted to support me in getting my first feature done, which I think is so lovely. But he also thought it was going to be a cool, challenging role for him. It's like playing against type. He brings such a huge amount of baggage of likability and everything, and he had to play a little bit of a pretentious man-child from entitled position in LA. And to take that guy and then chuck him through the ringer and strip him down, and do some wonderfully horrible things to him really appealed to him as well. I was super aware, and I was also super aware that I haven't had a huge amount of experience, and so that was a concern all the time. But when you have actors of that caliber, they're very intuitive and smart in terms of like where they need to be in the script at that stage. You don't have to remind people like Elijah. They know more about where to be, where their head space has to be, where they need to be physically as well. They're just incredible performers who've been doing it since they were 5 or 8 in Elijah's case. So that I was so lucky to have someone like that in the lead. You know, if it was someone who was maybe very green, it could have easily gone off the rails with me not being super confident enough to be able to get that consistency. So we knew that tonally, like it was a high wire act, and it was very, it could easily wobble and fall off as things start getting out of control. So I just kept reminding everyone that like we're going to play this as straight as possible and let, you know, even though the dialogue is really sort of out there in parts, but let's just play it really deadly serious. Not like earnestly, but just like the actors knew the humour, they knew how to sort of deliver it in the style that was required, and no one went too big. If anything, we just kept bringing it down and getting into a safe, sweet spot that I felt like was going to work. Well, there's stuff that came out of the blue that didn't seem hard at all. But we were shooting in summer on this island, so I thought when we have a water sequence, it was going to be relatively easy. But when you're on the right up top northern Pacific Ocean, it's freaking cold the whole time, and so we had issues with Elijah in the water for a long time, like body temperature issues, like that stuff comes out of the blue. That's more practical filmmaking concerns than actual narrative points to worry about. But yeah, no, everything. I mean, filmmaking is just hard. It's like the old cliche is like you go into war together, and it feels like you're in the trenches and you just get brief moments of coming up with respite to get some air, and then you go back under again. So nothing's easy, but it felt like we had a very tight bonding crew, and because we were all in one sort of area, it felt like summer camp, and that the vibe was very good, considering how tough all these sort of shoots are. So no, that came across, I think, in the film, that it's sort of, it does have an effect on the production. Sometimes they say hard ones, like Jaws, you end up with incredible films, and Apocalypse Now, and but I've heard the reverse, like some of the loveliest shoots end up with a piece of poo, so there's no rhyme or reason, really. Michael's background is stand-up comedy, so he's just a gifted natural comic, so we definitely let him go to town, but it was pretty much, most of his dialogue was scripted, and then he came up with some really fun stuff in ADR. I've got like hours of Michael rolling with stuff in ADR, which could be an extended edition on the DVD or whatever, but there's a really nice moment where he sings a little ditty that he just came up with on the spot, because he was probably slightly bored with how long things were taking, but we just shot it, and it ended up, I was like, it's perfect for the character. And he got the sense of I told him the villain should be a guy who's watched a lot of villains from films and wanted to emulate what, he's playing. He's very theatrical in his villainous, and he's enjoying his job. And so once he sort of got that idea from the start, he just ran with it. To be honest, I was just freaking out looking through the lens and seeing these actors of this caliber delivering this dialogue and going, holy shit, this is really good. And then I think it was the Elton John sequence where we have a great sort of fireside to and fro between Norval and his dad early on in the film, and I felt like when I was watching that back in the rushes, I was like, oh, this is going to cut really well. This feels like this is on the money, and there was a huge push of okay, I feel like things are going well, and so yeah. Absolutely, audience. Absolutely. I'm a populist at heart, and so my background is like either producing stuff, or I run film festivals or like short film programs, and so it's always audiences in mind. Of like, I think it's super selfish when you're using other people's money to make something that only you are going to enjoy at the end of the day. So I wanted people to embrace this. I knew that there's a target audience that are going to really love this film. There's going to be some who it's just not their cup of tea, but for the ones who are on the same wavelength, it's going to really be a fantastic ride. And yeah, the audience is always at the forefront of my mind. No, I find the things like this festival are like a bastion away from that, because that is the rest of the life of the rest of the year is where you're just bombarded by that. So it's exhausting, and I think we can go down rabbit holes of insanity, worrying about things too much. I think we should be worried about it though, and we should talk about it. But this is a respite really for me. This whole festival, and it's a pure escapism away from real world horrors. I'd rather just have my horrors that are on the screen, and then I can leave them there and then go home. Well, if they're really good, they'll come home with me as well. But yeah, I'm happy to not do a political rant.